Welcome back to The Breakdown with me, NLW. It's a daily podcast on macro, Bitcoin, and the big picture power shifts remaking our world. What's going on, guys? It is Sunday, February 23rd, and that means it's time for Long Read Sunday. Before we get into that, however, if you are enjoying The Breakdown, please go subscribe to it, give it a rating, give it a review, or if you want to dive deeper into the conversation, come join us on the Breakers Discord. You can find a link in the show notes or go to bit.ly/breakdownpod. All right, friends, welcome back to another Long Reads episode. Every week when I do these, I'm always looking for something a little bit different. There's inevitably some essay around whatever policy thing has been happening or whatever the big story in crypto is that week. But sometimes by the time we get to Sunday, I really don't want to be talking about that same thing again. There are only so many days that I can spend on the Libra scandal and meme coin as just one for example. Which is why I was delighted to find this piece in Bitcoin Magazine by Jacob Brown called Szabo's Micropayments and Mental Transaction Costs, 25 years later. Jacob is writing about the realities of UX friction that widespread micropayments would create and potential solutions to that problem. In other words, this is something that has nothing to do with what's going on right now, at least in terms of the crypto industry discourse, but is a really interesting thing to reflect on as part of some changing trends. So as always, I'm going to turn it over to the AI version of myself to read the piece, and then I will come back and discuss it. What if every click you made online cost just a fraction of a penny? What if your favorite news site, your go-to streaming service, or even your daily email usage could be paid for at tiny increments, rather than one big chunk at the end of the month? This vision, where nearly every digital interaction could be monetized by micropayments, has hovered over the internet economy since its earliest days. But as Nick Szabo's seminal 1999 paper, Micropayments and Mental Transaction Costs, pointed out, there's a lot more than technology standing in the way. 25 years on, Szabo's warnings about mental transaction costs, the cognitive overhead of deciding whether something is worth paying for, still resonate. Even as developments like AI-based intelligent agents and Bitcoin solutions such as the Lightning Network promise frictionless micropayments, Szabo's observations remain crucial to understanding why this idea hasn't fully taken flight and whether that might finally change. Below, we'll examine, first, the core arguments from Szabo's 1999 paper. Second, why micropayments remained on the fringes for decades. Third, how AI and Bitcoin's Lightning Network attempt to overcome these barriers. And fourth, whether mental transaction costs can, at long last, be reduced enough to make micropayments mainstream. Section, the paper that defined the dilemma. In Micropayments and Mental Transaction Costs, Nick Szabo pinpointed a truth that technologists often overlooked. While computational costs, like processing payments, preventing fraud, or validating cryptography, can be driven down, the mental overhead of deciding, monitoring, or worrying about every tiny expense remains stubbornly high. Wrote Szabo, quote, "Customer mental transaction costs will soon dominate the technological transaction costs of the payment system used in the transaction, if they don't already, and micropayment technology efforts which stress technological savings over cognitive savings will become irrelevant." Szabo's core argument is that for most consumers, there's a cognitive hassle factor in even the smallest payment decisions. Asking yourself, is this article worth 2 cents, 5 cents, 10? Quickly leads to fatigue, overshadowing the supposed simplicity of micropayments. Instead, consumers gravitate toward flat fees and all-you-can-eat bundles, even if those end up costing slightly more in the long run. The mental relief of knowing that you won't be nickel and dimed with every click is simply more valuable than the few pennies saved. So what are the sources of these cognitive costs? 3 points are listed in the paper. 1. Uncertain cash flows. Consumers rarely have perfect foresight into exactly how much they will earn or spend at any given time. Flat fees or bundling reduce the stress of planning and budgeting for these uncertainties. 2. Assessing product quality. In many online purchases, especially digital goods, you can't know the true quality of what you're buying until you've used it. Whether it's an article, a game, or a movie, the mental effort needed to decide, is this worth X, every time you click can be more expensive than the micropayment itself. 3. Decision-making complexity. Our brains are good at making quick calls when stakes are high or options are few, but terrible when we have infinite micro-decisions. Section, why micropayments stalled despite new tech. 1. The early internet payment hype. In the late 1990s and early 2000s, the internet was hailed as a new frontier for microbilling. Systems like NetBill, Millicent, and Payword promised frictionless flows of tiny sums. The dream? Artists, newspapers, and website owners would all be paid directly for each page view or each minute of content consumed. But even as processing costs and fraud got more manageable, user adoption never reached critical mass. Szabo's mental transaction cost argument largely explains this. Consumers found it simpler to deal with one monthly subscription than to handle countless pennies flying out of their digital wallets. 2. The rise of free services funded by ads. Search engines, social media, and news sites gradually adopted a free-to-consume, ad-supported model. Why? It's easy on the consumer's mind, no sign-up or micro-accounting for every page load. Meanwhile, the site owner monetizes your attention via advertisements. Even premium content gravitated toward low-friction paywalls and subscription models. Once the mental load of frequent, tiny payments was replaced by a single monthly charge, customers complained less and paid more consistently. 3. Intelligent agents and AI. Early promises, slow results. Szabo also anticipated solutions like intelligent agents that could, in theory, handle many micro-decisions on behalf of the consumer. The idea was that an AI could internalize your preferences. I like reading about finance, but only from reputable sources, and I'm willing to pay up to 10 cents an article, and then automatically approve or decline microcharges. Yet building a truly personalized agent that doesn't require continuous training and oversight, let alone potential conflicts of interest, has proven extremely challenging. For AI to manage micropayments accurately, it must grasp your tacit preferences and be trusted to act in your best interest. Hello, friends. I am thrilled to share that Ledger is once again partnering and sponsoring with The Breakdown. Many of you know, but for those of you who don't, Ledger is the most secure hardware wallet for your crypto and logins. It's trusted by 7 million users and secures 20% of the world's digital assets. What's more, Ledger is a lot more than wallets. Over the recent years, they've built a comprehensive ecosystem of products and services, all of which are designed to make digital ownership more secure and accessible. You can buy your Bitcoin with Ledger and Ledger Live, and so much more. Basically, not only do they want to keep your assets secure, they want you to be able to do more with them. Ledger's newest devices, the Ledger Stacks and Ledger Flex, introduced the world's first secure touchscreens, making it easier and safer to manage your transactions and assets. Alongside Ledger Stacks and Ledger Flex, the company also launched the Ledger Security Key app, offering a safer alternative to traditional passwords and enhancing your digital security. If you are in this space, you owe it to yourself to at least check out Ledger and their ecosystem, what they have available to you. So thanks once again to Ledger for sponsoring the show. Section: Has anything changed in 25 years? While Szabo's insights remain valid, the landscape in 2024 and onward does differ in a few important ways. 1. User interfaces have improved. From intuitive mobile wallets to chatbots, user interface design is leagues ahead of where it was in 1999. Some friction has been removed. You can tap to pay, use passwordless logins, or integrate with wearables. But the cognitive overhead, the act of deciding whether a purchase is worthwhile, hasn't vanished. Even a single tap is too much if you have to do it hundreds of times a day. 2. Blockchain and cryptocurrencies. The Lightning Network has aimed to fix payments by enabling near-instant transactions with very low fees. It doesn't solve the core argument of the paper, which assumes technical transaction costs are zero. But the Lightning Network is the current best standard and protocol on the internet for open, interoperable money to flow on the internet. 3. AI enters the chat. Tools like ChatGPT, advanced personalized recommendation engines, and agent frameworks have made it possible to tailor experiences more deeply to each user. In theory, an AI assistant could learn your tastes or budget so well that you're rarely disturbed with micro-approval prompts or can automate them entirely within a certain budget. However, building up that trust in an AI agent remains a hurdle. The question moves from, is this worth it, to what is my AI agent doing? Section: Looking ahead. Are we ready for a micropayment renaissance? For mass adoption to happen, people need to avoid feeling nickel and dimed at every turn. Even if the technical fees are near zero, the mental transaction cost can make micropayments feel cumbersome. Making micropayments as invisible as possible while keeping track of the value being exchanged is therefore crucial. Getting micropayments right will likely require a rethinking of business models. There are exciting examples where micropayments are emerging as a viable strategy. Example: Paper API call. In the AI SaaS world, micropayments are already thriving, called credits or tokens. Because companies evaluate usage strictly on ROI and business needs, they're less deterred by the mental friction that keeps consumers at bay. They use just as much as they need in real time. Example: tips and donations. Small voluntary payments for creators or open source projects can work precisely because they don't trigger the same sense of obligation. Users donate out of gratitude or community spirit, making micropayments feel more like a gesture than a forced charge. Stacker News and Nostr have been pushing this paradigm forward, leveraging the Lightning Network. Clever design for seamless experiences. No matter the business model, user experience design is key to making micropayments practical. The simpler the interface, the more invisible the payments become. Some ideas include: Idea: automated rules and AI, let users set broad preferences, I don't mind spending up to $2/day on premium articles and rely on an intelligent agent to handle decisions in the background. Idea: bundled invoices. Aggregate multiple microcharges into one easy-to-understand statement, reducing the mental toll of each individual transaction. Ideally, this would be a standard and cross-product instead of itemized in one niche or vertical. Idea: intuitive feedback. Offer clear yet minimal prompts, like a progress bar of monthly spend, that helps users track costs without being overwhelmed. Overcoming the cognitive barriers identified by Nick Szabo demands not only faster, cheaper transaction rails, but also thoughtful design that caters to real human psychology. When these elements come together, AI-based automation, usage-based models that don't feel invasive, and a user interface that's nearly frictionless, micropayments could see a genuine renaissance. Section: Conclusion: Szabo's insights still rule. Nick Szabo's 1999 paper has proven remarkably prescient and held up after all these years. Even as technology has advanced, faster internet speeds, blockchain-based payment rails, and sophisticated AI, the central problem remains. People don't want to think about small payments all the time. It's not just about software or cryptography, it's about the psychology of how we value attention, convenience, and certainty. Micropayments can succeed only if these mental costs can be minimized or bundled away. AI agents and the Bitcoin Lightning Network are crucial new pieces of the puzzle, but their success hinges on delivering a user experience that hides or automates micropayment decisions altogether. Will the next 25 years finally bring an era where micropayments flourish? Possibly, if we figure out how to make paying a fraction of a penny feel as effortless as a monthly subscription. Even then, we might realize that micropayments simply become one more arrow in the quiver of payment models, coexisting with ad-based, subscription-based, and outright free offerings. But for now, Szabo's warning stands. A world of pure micropayments still collides with human psychology. Our mental transaction costs are real, and if the solutions of the future, be they AI, Lightning, or something else entirely, don't address our deeper preference for simplicity, micropayments will remain an intriguing idea that never quite becomes the default. All right, first of all, great sum up of all of this by Jacob. Really makes this very accessible, and it's a great jumping off point for this conversation. This conversation is one that lots and lots of people have been interested in over time. In the crypto space, if you go all the way back to 2017, one of the big themes of ICOs, at least those that weren't just trying to rob you blind, was the idea of shifting the fundamental business model of the internet. The business model of the internet had, of course, from time immemorial been advertising. This was a fact that some early internet pioneers had actually called the internet's original sin. And as Jacob pointed out in his piece, the presence of an ad-based business model really undermined the need for something like micropayments. However, fast forward to 2017, about 20 years after that business model was first developed, and people were looking for alternatives. It was clear that at the size and scale that social networks in particular were getting, there was a real misalignment. Networks whose incentives were initially aligned with their users, in other words, to grow the network and make it more valuable for everyone, had reached such a point of saturation that they had to switch to getting more out of the users that were there, a more exploitative relationship inherently. And so people started to think, could crypto become an answer to that? Jacob makes the point that despite a lot of technological advancements, there's still those problems of human psychology that potentially get in the way. His conclusion, you'll remember, is Szabo's insights still rule. People don't want to think about small payments all the time. He points out it's about the psychology of how we value attention, convenience, and certainty. And obviously, Jacob does take a bunch of time, all the way back 25 years ago, to think about the context of AI and how that might change things. To the extent one is interested in this particular area, I think where it starts to get interesting is actually where human psychology no longer matters, specifically in agent-to-agent relationships. One of the things that is inevitable but still hard to wrap our heads around is the degree to which online interactions are going to be mediated in the future by AI agents acting on our behalf. AI agents are going to be making buying decisions, they're going to be making ad placement decisions, they're going to be making creative decisions for ad copy, they're going to be making basically every type of decision that a human makes right now. And in many cases, they will be interacting directly with each other. The scenario in which I see micropayments coming back to viability is in those agent-to-agent interactions where these concerns about human attention simply don't apply. An agent, for example, has the ability to take microbids for payment for a particular microservice from 1,000 other agents and just go with the highest bidder, even if it's a fraction of a cent higher. A human never could deal with that and is going to be looking for shortcuts, but agents don't care. And so while I'm not 100% convinced that micropayments are a prerequisite part of this agentic landscape, it certainly feels like a context that could bring them back online in a serious way. Now, given that, the design constraints around how they work are going to be totally different in that we're not going to be thinking about human constraints, but instead agent constraints. To me, this is just another example of how fundamentally the landscape of work and the economy is going to shift over the coming years. It's driven by AI, but as we see from this conversation, will intersect so many other sectors as well. Anyways, really great piece from Jacob this week. Appreciate you writing it. As always, I've included a link in the show notes. Go check it out. For now, though, that's going to do it for today's breakdown. Appreciate you listening as always, and until next time, be safe and take care of each other. Peace.